Media Fact Checker. Victorian teachers' statewide strike over pay and conditions dispute. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian Education Union, AEU, is leading a 24-hour statewide strike by Victorian public school teachers, principals, and support staff on March 24, the first such strike in 13 years. The Fair Work Commission approved the strike action after 98% of AEU members voted in favour, following 9 months of failed enterprise bargaining negotiations. The Victorian government offered teachers a 17% pay rise over 4 years, 8% upfront, then 3% annually for 3 years, which the AEU rejected as inadequate, demanding a 35% rise over 3 years instead. Victorian teachers are the lowest paid public school teachers in Australia, with graduate teachers earning $78,801 compared to $90,177 in NSW, and experienced teachers earning $15,000 less than their NSW counterparts. The strike involves approximately 30,000 teachers, principals, and support staff across Victoria's 1570 government schools, with some schools expecting to close or operate with limited supervision. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian does not specify the exact government pay offer details, while The Age and ABC clarify it as an 8% upfront rise followed by 3% annual rises for 3 years, totaling 17% over 4 years. The Age reports the AEU rejected the government's offer on Monday night, while ABC states the union rejected the 17% offer after more than a year of negotiations without specifying the exact timing of rejection. The Age claims the government's offer was tabled a week ago, but ABC and The Age's other articles suggest negotiations had been ongoing for 9 months prior. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Testing and reviewing chef's knives for home cooks, focusing on performance, durability, and care. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ben Lippitt tested 14 knives over a fortnight for The Guardian, focusing on tasks like dicing shallots, slicing tomatoes, and chopping herbs. The Wusthof Classic Chef Knife, 20 cm, was named the best overall chef's knife by Ben Lippitt in both articles. Victorinox Fibrox Chef's Knife, 20 cm, was selected as the best budget knife, priced at £43. Helen Simmons, a knife specialist, advised against cutting stones, bones, or frozen food to preserve knife edges. No dishwasher use is recommended for knives, as it blunts the blade and damages handles, per Helen Simmons. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Victorinox Fibrox Chef's Knife was the best budget knife without specifying a price, while Article 2 explicitly states its price as £43. Article 1 mentions the Victorinox Fibrox Chef's Knife was used by Ben Lippitt at the start of his cooking career, but Article 2 does not include this personal anecdote. Article 1 lists the Blenheim Forge Santoku knife, 17.5 cm, as the best investment knife, while Article 2 does not mention this specific model or category. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Top 25 travel experiences and destinations in Asia for Australian visitors. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Asia has 48 countries according to the United Nations, extending from the Indian subcontinent to Central Asia and the Middle East. Indonesia ranked as Australia's top visited destination in Asia last year, driven by Bali's popularity. Japan ranked 3rd, China 5th, and Thailand 6th among Australia's top 10 most visited Asian destinations in 2023. Vietnam and Sri Lanka are among Australia's fastest growing Asian destinations, with Vietnam expected to rank higher next year. China extended its visa-free entry policy until the end of the current year. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian economic fears over US-Iran conflict and domestic policy fallout. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Barry Cassidy and Tony Barry are co-hosts of The Guardian's Back to Back Barry's podcast analysing economic risks. The discussion centres on the potential economic fallout from a US-Iran war and its impact on Australia. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, has raised the cash rate as part of economic policy. Liberal MP Andrew Hastie has publicly criticised US President Trump's approach to Iran. Treasurer Jim Chalmers is described as opening the door for a possible recession in Australia. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Democrats impeach bid against Attorney General Pam Bondi over Epstein files briefing. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Pam Bondi, the Florida Attorney General, led a closed-door briefing on Jeffrey Epstein files on Wednesday, the 10th of April, 2024, at the U.S. Capitol. Democrats walked out of the briefing after less than an hour, calling it an outrageous fake hearing due to Bondi's refusal to testify under oath. The House Oversight Committee subpoenaed Bondi earlier this month, April 2024, to testify about the Justice Department's handling of Epstein investigation files. 5 Republicans joined Democrats in issuing the subpoena. California Congressman Robert Garcia labeled the briefing a fake hearing and accused Bondi of defying subpoenas and being evasive. Florida Congressman Maxwell Alejandro Frost repeatedly asked Bondi if she would testify under oath, to which she did not commit. Frost called her a liar and accused her of spying on Congress. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states that Representative Summer Lee introduced impeachment articles against Bondi on the same day as the briefing, while Article 2 does not mention this specific timing or Lee's role in introducing the articles. Article 1 mentions that 5 Republicans joined Democrats in issuing the subpoena to Bondi, but Article 2 does not specify the number of Republicans involved in the subpoena process. Article 1 includes details about the Trump administration's deportation policies and their impact on families, which are not mentioned in Article 2. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Utah woman convicted of murdering her husband via fentanyl poisoning after financial and marital disputes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Carrie Richins was convicted of aggravated murder for poisoning her husband Eric Richins with fentanyl in March 2022 in Park City, Utah. The lethal dose of fentanyl was slipped into a cocktail Eric Richins drank at their home outside Park City. Carrie Richins was $4.5 million in debt and falsely believed she would inherit $4 million plus from Eric's estate upon his death. Carrie Richins was also convicted of attempted murder, fentanyl-laced sandwich causing hives and blackout on Valentine's Day 2022, and fraudulently claiming insurance benefits after his death. Sentencing for aggravated murder, 25 years to life, is scheduled for May 13, 2024, the day Eric would have turned 44. But not all outlets told the same story. Thege and SMH report Carrie Richins' defense claimed Eric was addicted to painkillers and asked her to procure opioids, but she told police in a video she had no history of his illicit drug use. Guardian states Carrie Richins slipped *5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl, while Thege and SMH do not specify the exact multiple. Thege and SMH mention Carrie Richins' internet search for luxury prisons for the rich America, but Guardian does not include this detail. This story was covered by The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former Liberal staffer Bruce Lehrmann faces Queensland rape trial in November 2024. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Bruce Lehrmann, 30, is charged with 2 counts of rape alleged to have occurred in Toowoomba in October 2021. The trial is scheduled to begin on November 2, 2024, in the Toowoomba District Court. Judge Deborah Richards set the trial date during a court mention on July 2024. Lehrmann has not yet formally entered a plea but has indicated he will plead not guilty. Defense lawyer Zali Burrows is representing Lehrmann and has discussed the possibility of a judge-alone trial. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions the pre-trial hearing is expected to take a couple of hours, while Newscomau does not specify duration. ABC does not mention the strip club or false name details, which Newscomau includes as part of police allegations. ABC does not specify the complainant was with friends at the strip club, which Newscomau states. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nicola Olyslagers wins silver in women's high jump at World Athletics Indoor Championships 2024. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nicola Olyslagers won silver in the women's high jump at the World Athletics Indoor Championships in Torun, Poland. Yaroslava Mahuchik won gold in the women's high jump with a clearance of 2.01 meters. Olyslagers, Yulia Levchenko, Ukraine, and Angelina Topic, Serbia, shared silver after all clearing 1.99 meters on their first attempt. Olyslagers cleared 1.99 meters, equaling her indoor personal best. Eleanor Patterson, Australia, finished 7th with a clearance of 1.93 meters. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Olyslagers was a little surprised to be among the top 4, while ABC does not mention this surprise. The Guardian notes Olyslagers' comment about waking up and not feeling ready, which ABC omits entirely. The Guardian highlights Peter Boll's comment about only racing indoors twice before, while ABC does not include this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Trump orders ICE agents to assist U.S. airport security during DHS funding shutdown. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump threatened to deploy ICE agents to U.S. airports starting Monday, March 24, if Democrats did not agree to DHS funding, per ABC, Guardian, X3, and ABC, X2. The partial government shutdown began on February 14, 2026, and is in its 36th day as of March 2026, per ABC, X2, Guardian, X2, and ABC, X3. More than 400 TSA workers have quit since the shutdown began, per ABC, X2, Guardian, X2, and ABC, X3. TSA officers are missing paychecks due to the shutdown, with some set to miss their second full paycheck on March 27, 2026, per Guardian, X2, and ABC, X2. ICE agents are not trained for airport security, which is TSA's domain, per ABC, X2, Guardian, X2, and ABC, X3. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC, Article 1, states Trump's deployment threat was made on March 22, 2026, but Guardian, Article 2, does not specify the exact date of the threat, only that it was on Saturday, March 22. ABC, Article 3, says Trump ordered ICE agents to operate security queues, while Guardian, Article 4, says the roles are still being finalized and may include guarding exits or checking IDs, not necessarily operating queues. ABC, Article 1, reports Trump's deployment threat was made on Truth Social, while Guardian, Article 5, does not mention Truth Social but quotes Trump's posts directly. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian universities' misuse of confidentiality clauses in student complaints, especially sexual harassment cases. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The National Student Ombudsman, NSO, report found that 21 out of 44 Australian universities use confidentiality clauses in student complaints, including those about gender-based violence. UTS, James Cook University, JCU, and the University of Newcastle were singled out for confidentiality practices that breached trauma-informed practice. UTS was ordered to apologize to a student, Hayley Asterisk, for effectively silencing her after investigating her for an alleged confidentiality breach following an insufficient evidence finding on her sexual harassment complaint. The NSO report stated that UTS did not possess any information indicating Hayley had talked about the details of the university's investigation or her sexual harassment complaint. The NSO was established in February 2025 as an independent service to address systemic failures in university complaint handling, receiving over 2,200 complaints in its first 6 months. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states that UTS told the NSO it placed no restriction on students discussing complaints with family and friends, but ABC does not explicitly contradict this, only notes the NSO found the university's advice was inconsistent. Newscomau reports that UTS told the student after the insufficient evidence finding that there is, quote, incomplete, while ABC does not provide the exact wording but focuses on the university's broader handling of the case. Newscomau does not mention the specific name Hayley Asterisk or her direct quotes about feeling blindsided, which are prominently featured in ABC's article. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 4 Jewish ambulances set on fire in London anti-Semitic attack. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 ambulances belonging to the Jewish Community Ambulance Service Hatzolah were set on fire in Golders Green, London, around 1:45 a.m. local time on Monday. The explosions were caused by gas canisters, oxygen tanks, onboard the ambulances, not bombs or explosive devices, according to police and Shomrim, northwest London. 3 suspects, seen in masked footage, remain at large. No arrests have been made as of the reporting time. The Metropolitan Police are treating the incident as a suspected anti-Semitic hate crime, with Superintendent Sarah Jackson confirming the investigation is ongoing. 6 London Fire Brigade fire engines and 40 firefighters attended the scene. The fire was brought under control by 3:06 a.m. with no injuries reported. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 1, describes the explosions as booming out and causing terror, while ABC and Newscomau describe them as loud but do not emphasize terror as strongly. Newscomau and ABC both mention 3 suspects, but only ABC explicitly states that social media footage shows them pouring gasoline on the ambulances. Newscomau and ABC both report the explosions were caused by gas canisters, but Newscomau mentions gas canisters onboard the ambulances while ABC and Shomrim specify oxygen tanks. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian fuel crisis amid Middle East conflict and Strait of Hormuz blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese is convening a snap meeting of National Cabinet on the 10th of May, 2024 to coordinate a national response to the fuel crisis, Articles 3, 4, 5, 6. The Strait of Hormuz carries about 20% of global oil supply, Articles 2, 3, 6. Iran has blocked the Strait of Hormuz, disrupting oil shipments and causing fuel price spikes globally, Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Australia has released nearly 20% of its domestic petrol and diesel reserves, Articles 3, 6. The government temporarily relaxed fuel standards to inject an extra 100 million litres of fuel per month into the market for 60 days, Articles 3, 6. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC report the government is preparing further measures in the coming days, Articles 3, 6, but SMH and Theej do not mention specific upcoming actions beyond National Cabinet, Articles 1, 2. The Guardian and ABC emphasize demand surges causing shortages, Articles 3, 6, while SMH and Theej focus more on supply disruptions and potential sanctions pauses, Articles 1, 2. The Guardian and ABC highlight opposition criticism of Bowen's handling of fuel distribution, Articles 3, 6, whereas SMH and Theej do not include this detail. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Federal judge blocks Pentagon's press access restrictions under Trump administration's policy. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A federal judge, Paul Friedman, blocked key portions of the Pentagon's press access policy introduced in October 2025, ruling it unconstitutional under the First Amendment. The policy prohibited journalists from soliciting information that the Pentagon did not directly provide and allowed revocation of credentials for non-compliant outlets. Of 56 news outlets in the Pentagon Press Association, only one, unnamed, agreed to sign the new policy. Major outlets including the New York Times, Washington Post, and AP refused. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth approved the policy change in October 2025, leading the Pentagon to assemble a new press corps consisting of pro-Trump outlets. The New York Times filed a lawsuit alleging the policy violated free speech protections and gave the Pentagon unfettered discretion to revoke passes based on viewpoint discrimination. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the policy was introduced in October 2025, while ABC does not specify the exact month but confirms it was approved by Hegseth in 2025. No direct contradiction, but Guardian provides a more precise date. The Guardian mentions the Pentagon assembled a new press corps consisting of pro-Trump outlets and media personalities after the exodus, while ABC does not explicitly state this composition but implies it through the context of the policy's intent. The Guardian includes a direct quote from Judge Friedman about the importance of the public having access to information amid Venezuela and Iran conflicts, while ABC does not quote Friedman's full reasoning but focuses on the policy's vagueness and due process violations. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff strike over rejected pay deal and industrial disputes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Over 75% of ABC staff, 75% of total workforce, will walk off the job for 24 hours starting at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, the first strike in 20 years. The draft enterprise agreement offered a 10% total pay rise over 3 years, 3.5% in year 1, 3.25% in years 2 and 3, with a one-off $1,000 payment excluded for casual staff. 60% of ABC staff, both journalists and non-journalists, voted no on Sunday to the revised enterprise agreement. Unions, MEAA and CPSU, rejected the offer due to concerns about staff appraisal processes, career progression, night shift penalty rates, and reproductive health leave. The last ABC strike occurred in 2006, causing major disruptions to TV and radio services. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 60% of ABC staff voted no to the revised agreement, while News Corp Australia does not specify the exact percentage of no votes but implies a majority rejection. The Guardian states 75% of the total workforce participated in the ballot, while News Corp Australia does not mention the participation rate. The Guardian cites a 2023 inflation rate of 3.8% as context for the pay offer, but News Corp Australia does not reference inflation figures. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Homicide investigation and manslaughter charge in Perth's Banksia Grove. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 42-year-old woman was found unresponsive at a home in Banksia Grove, Perth's northern suburbs, on Thursday morning around 9 a.m. The woman was declared dead at the scene by paramedics after being unresponsive. The incident occurred on Mayerlee Bend, Banksia Grove. A man in his 40s was assisting police with inquiries, Article 1, and later charged, Article 2. Police received the initial report around 9 a.m. on Thursday. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states a man in his 40s is assisting police, while Article 2 specifies a 47-year-old man was arrested and charged. Article 1 does not mention charges or an arrest, while Article 2 states the man was charged with manslaughter. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Prime Minister Albanese and Minister Burke heckled at Lokemba Mosque Eid event. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese and Tony Burke attended Eid prayers at Lokemba Mosque in Sydney's West on Friday morning, 2024. Protesters at the mosque shouted phrases including genocide supporters, disgrace, and shame at Albanese and Burke. A 33-year-old man was removed from the mosque by police after being identified as a heckler and given a move-on direction. Gamal Kir, secretary of the Lebanese Muslim Association, delivered a statement defending the invitation of Albanese and Burke. Lebanese Health Ministry reports at least 912 deaths, including 111 children, and 2,221 wounded in Israel's strikes on Lebanon. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Albanese made a hasty exit avoiding a crowd on the mosque steps, while the ABC states he and Burke remained until the end of the speech before being led out. The SMH claims initial plans included Albanese giving a speech, but The Guardian and ABC do not mention this. The ABC reports a heckler claimed Albanese was responsible for 1 billion deaths, while this exact figure is not mentioned in other sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Kangaroo Island Council's proposed feral cat eradication policy and progress. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kangaroo Island Council is considering a last cat policy to ban new pet cats from being introduced to the island. Mayor Michael Pengelly stated the goal is no cats on Kangaroo Island, with eradication potentially taking 10 to 30 years. The Dudley Peninsula project has removed 2,800 feral cats, leaving around 150 remaining as of recent reports. Feral cats threaten over 50 native species on Kangaroo Island, including the Kangaroo Island Dunnart and Little Penguin colonies. The federal government provided $1.61 million in December 2023 to the Feral Cat Eradication Project. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions Mayor Pengelly saying the last cat policy is not that far advanced yet, while Newscomau does not provide a specific timeline on its advancement. ABC states the council aims to eradicate feral cats by 2030, but Newscomau does not explicitly mention this deadline. ABC includes a quote from Mayor Pengelly saying it could take 10, 20, 30 years, I just don't know, while Newscomau does not reference this uncertainty in timeline. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Coronial inquest into Bradley Murdoch's death and his refusal to disclose Peter Falconio's remains. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Bradley Murdoch was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2005 for the murder of Peter Falconio and attempted kidnapping of Joanne Lees, with a non-parole period of 28 years. Murdoch died from stage 4 cancer, throat cancer, in Alice Springs Hospital's palliative care unit on July 16, 2025, after 22 years in prison. Police made 2 attempts to convince Murdoch to reveal Falconio's remains in the weeks before his death, one visit to the prison on June 25, 2025, and another brief visit to his palliative care bed. Murdoch refused to watch a video of Falconio's parents shown by police during the June 25 visit and yelled at police to get out during the July visit. A $500,000 reward remains for information leading to Falconio's remains, which have never been found. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Murdoch's cancer was diagnosed in November 2024 after a neck lump complaint, while The Guardian does not specify the exact diagnosis timeline. ABC highlights occasional delays in medical treatment were acknowledged but no missed opportunity for earlier diagnosis, while The Guardian focuses on Murdoch's verbal abuse of staff and refusal of radiotherapy. The Guardian describes Murdoch's final interaction with police as yelling "Get out" at his bedside, while ABC does not mention this specific phrase but notes a 30-second visit. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-led Middle East conflict escalation and global response over Strait of Hormuz and energy infrastructure attacks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. European leaders, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and Japan issued a joint statement condemning Iran for attacks on commercial shipping vessels and civilian energy facilities, including the Strait of Hormuz closure. Iran retaliated against an Israeli strike on its South Pars natural gas field by attacking a major Qatari LNG facility, Ras Laffan, in Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, causing 17% of Qatar's LNG export capacity to be eliminated, valued at $20 billion, 28 billion Australian dollars. Brent crude oil price briefly rose above $119 per barrel on Thursday due to escalating tensions. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi met US President Donald Trump at the White House, offering Japan's readiness to coordinate efforts to stabilize the Strait of Hormuz and urging Iran to stop malign actions. Iran's Foreign Minister Said Abbas Araghchi vowed retaliation with zero restraint if civilian infrastructure is struck again, stating any war end must address damage to Iranian civilian sites. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH reports US media contradicts Trump's claim that he told Netanyahu not to strike South Pars, stating Washington was aware of and supported the Israeli attack in advance. SMH includes Trump's direct quote about not informing allies about the war in advance, while Thij omits this specific detail. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian public anxiety over national security threats and perceived government unpreparedness. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian National University's National Security College surveyed over 20,000 Australians between November 2024 and February 2026, with data collected before the US-Iran conflict began on February 28, 2026. 69% of Australians surveyed in July 2025 believed Australia would be involved in a foreign military conflict within 5 years, with 45% expecting a foreign military attack on Australian soil during the same period. Concerns about terrorism rose sharply from 55% in late 2024 to 72% in February 2026 following the Bondi beach terror attack on December 14, 2025. More than 85% of respondents considered climate change impacts, AI-enabled attacks, disinformation, foreign interference, economic crises, and supply disruptions as likely threats within the next decade. Professor Rory Medcalf, head of the National Security College, stated that most Australians feel the country is unprepared for multiple security shocks and want more transparent communication from government. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and News.com.au both report 45% of Australians expect a foreign military attack on Australian soil within 5 years, but The Guardian states this figure was rated as likely, very likely, or almost certain in July 2025, without specifying the exact percentage. The Guardian mentions that the lowest-rated threat was an onshore attack by a foreign military, but ABC and News.com.au do not provide a ranking of threats, only stating it as a significant concern. No contradictions found regarding the timing of the Bondi beach attack, December 14, 2025, or the US-Iran conflict, February 28, 2026, across sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, News.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Leadership crisis and potential spill in Victorian Labour Party ahead of 2024 election. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jacinta Allan is Victorian Premier and faces leadership spill speculation due to low approval ratings and upcoming November 2024 election. Allan's net approval rating is -37%, Demos AU poll in Herald Sun, and only 20% of voters prefer her as Premier, Resolve polling for The Age, February 2024. Deputy Premier Ben Carroll, Right Faction, and Transport Infrastructure Minister Gabrielle Williams, Left Faction, are the most likely leadership contenders. Allen dismissed leadership speculation as anonymous gossip from scallywags and stated, "She has great support from my strong and united Labour team." Victorian Labour Party has 69 seats in caucus, with Left Faction holding 39 seats and Right Faction holding the remaining 30. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Socialist Left Faction's South East Group is directly pushing for a leadership change, but these MPs emphatically denied it to The Guardian. The Age states a factional chief offered the view that anyone other than Allen would lead the party to a better result, while The Guardian notes senior Right Faction figures are reluctant to move without Left Faction coordination. The Guardian claims Allen's hesitation to act on corruption is a major issue, but this detail is not mentioned in other sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran escalation over Strait of Hormuz and energy infrastructure threats in Middle East war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump gave Iran a 48-hour deadline, until 23:44 Greenwich Mean Time on March 25, to fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz without threat, or face US strikes on Iran's power plants, posting on Truth Social on March 24, 2026. Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf stated that if Iran's power plants and infrastructure are targeted, vital infrastructure as well as energy and oil infrastructure across the entire region will be considered legitimate targets and will be irreversibly destroyed, according to statements on March 24 to 25, 2026. Iran's Military Operational Command Qatem al-Anbiya warned that if the US targets Iran's power plants, the Strait of Hormuz will be completely closed and will not reopen until Iran's destroyed power plants are rebuilt, as reported on March 24 to 25, 2026. Iran's missiles struck southern Israeli cities Dimona and Orod on March 24 to 25, injuring approximately 200 people, including children, and damaging buildings, with Israeli air defenses failing to intercept some strikes, confirmed by multiple sources. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed to vessels linked to Iran's enemies, US and Israel, as per Ali Mousavi, Iran's representative to the International Maritime Organization, on March 24 to 25, 2026. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Steve Reed, denied Iran was targeting Europe, stating he was not aware of any assessment that Iran intended to strike European capitals, while the Israeli military chief Eyal Zami claimed Iran's missiles had a range reaching Berlin, Paris, or Berlin, implying a direct threat to Europe. ABC reported that Lebanese President Joseph Aoun accused Israel of laying the groundwork for an invasion in Lebanon's south, while Israel's military stated it was targeting Hezbollah infrastructure to contain the threat in the south and eliminate it, framing the strikes as defensive rather than preparatory for an invasion. The Guardian, Steve Reed, stated Trump was speaking for himself when threatening to obliterate Iran's power plants, while other sources, e.g., Newscomau, SMH, presented the threat as an official US administration stance without qualifying it as Trump's personal opinion. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iranian women's football teams return to Iran after asylum drama in Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 7 members of Iran's women's national football team, 5 players, 1 staff member, and 1 player handler, initially sought asylum in Australia on March 10, 2024, after refusing to sing Iran's national anthem during the Women's Asian Cup. 5 of those 7, including captain Zahra Ganbari, later withdrew their asylum claims and returned to Iran via Malaysia, Oman, and Turkey, arriving in early March 2024. 2 players, Fatma Pasandadeh and Atfef Ramazanisadeh, remained in Australia and began training with Brisbane Roar's A-League women's squad without hijabs. Iranian state media reported the team's return as a patriotic victory, with officials like Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf and Mehdi Taj praising their decision. The team's silence during the national anthem at the Asian Cup was widely interpreted as a protest, with Iranian state media later labeling the players wartime traitors. Mohammad Reza Shahbazi, Iranian state TV. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC claims former footballer Atfef Morodi's allegations about regime pressure on players are credible, but Australian government sources deny Morodi's specific claims about staff member Zahra Sultan Moshkeka relaying threats. The Guardian reports Iranian rights groups accuse Tehran of pressuring families to coerce returns, while Iranian officials dismiss these claims as deception and intimidation by anti-Iran elements. News Corp Australia describes Iranian state media's border welcome as a small ceremony with flags, while ABC and The Guardian emphasize the symbolic importance of a larger rally planned in Tehran's Valier Square. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Tropical cyclone Nicola impacts northern Australia across Queensland, NT, and WA. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tropical cyclone Nicola formed in the Coral Sea on March 11, 2026, and intensified into a Category 5 system before making landfall in far north Queensland on March 14, 2026. The cyclone made its first landfall near Cohen, Cape York Peninsula, as a Category 4 system on March 14, 2026, with sustained winds of 195 km per hour and gusts up to 270 km per hour. Nicola crossed the Gulf of Carpentaria and made a second landfall in the Northern Territory near Numbulwar as a Category 3 system on March 16, 2026. The cyclone brought heavy rainfall, including 200 to 300 mm in some areas, causing flooding in Katherine, Adelaide River, and Daly River communities in the Northern Territory. Nicola was downgraded to a tropical low after crossing the Northern Territory but was forecast to redevelop into a tropical cyclone in the Indian Ocean, potentially impacting Western Australia. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reported that the Northern Territory was experiencing a climate disaster with successive governments investing in fracking, while the ABC and SBS did not mention this specific issue in their articles. The Guardian mentioned that remote Aboriginal communities in the Northern Territory faced inconsistent levels of care in evacuation centres, but the ABC did not provide detailed reports on this specific issue. The ABC reported that the Katherine River was expected to exceed the minor flood level of 16 metres and potentially reach the major flood level of 17.5 metres on March 17, 2026, while the Guardian did not provide specific river level predictions for Katherine. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. BHP and Woodside Energy announce new CEOs amid leadership transitions and corporate milestones. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Brandon Craig will become BHP's chief executive and director from July 1, 2025, succeeding Mike Henry. Mike Henry served as BHP's CEO since 2020 and oversaw the company becoming the world's largest copper producer. Brandon Craig previously held the role of BHP America's president and led the company's iron ore operations in Western Australia. Elizabeth Westcott was appointed Woodside Energy's permanent CEO and managing director, succeeding Meg O'Neill. Woodside's North West Shelf gas project received a 40-year extension approved by the Environmental Protection Authority in September 2025. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump criticizes Australia and NATO allies over Iran war and Strait of Hormuz blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly stated on social media that the US no longer need or desire NATO countries' assistance in the Iran war, writing "We never did." Guardian, The Age, SMH, Newscom.au, ABC. Trump named Australia, Japan, South Korea, and NATO as countries whose help the US no longer requires, stating "We do not need the help of anyone." Guardian, The Age, SMH, Newscom.au, ABC. Australia's Transport Minister Catherine King confirmed Australia would not send a ship to the Strait of Hormuz, Guardian, ABC. Iran has effectively blocked the Strait of Hormuz since the US-Israel strikes on Iran in February, causing global oil supply disruptions and fuel price surges, Guardian, ABC. The International Energy Agency warned the Iran conflict is the greatest threat to global energy supply in history of the world, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC report Australia's Transport Minister Catherine King ruled out sending a ship to the Strait of Hormuz, but The Age and SMH do not mention this specific statement by name. The Guardian states Trump was very surprised Australia declined to send troops to the Strait of Hormuz, while The Age and ABC do not include this specific phrasing. The Guardian and ABC report Trump did not explicitly ask Australia for help in the Strait of Hormuz, but Newscom.au states Trump last week was urging allies to deploy ships to the Strait of Hormuz, implying a timeline discrepancy. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Global energy crisis from US-Israel war on Iran and Strait of Hormuz blockage. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Fatih Birol, IEA, stated the current energy crisis exceeds the combined impact of the 1973 and 1979 oil crises, 10 M barrels day lost, and Russia's Ukraine invasion gas crisis, 75 BCM lost, with 11 M barrels day of oil and 140 BCM of gas now disrupted. Guardian Articles 1, 2, 3, ABC Article 4. The IEA released 400 million barrels of oil from emergency reserves on March 11, 2024, marking the largest emergency release in history. Guardian Articles 1, 2, 3, ABC Article 4. The Strait of Hormuz carries 20% of global oil supply, and its closure due to Iran conflict has caused severe supply shortages. Guardian Articles 1, 2, 3, ABC Article 4. Iran's attacks and US-Israel strikes have damaged or destroyed at least 40 energy assets in the Gulf region. Guardian Articles 1, 2, 3, ABC Article 4. Donald Trump issued a 48-hour ultimatum to Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, threatening to obliterate Iranian power plants if the deadline was not met. Guardian Articles 1, 2. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states Trump's ultimatum deadline was for 48 hours, while Guardian Article 2 states the deadline was due to expire late Monday night, no explicit 48-hour mention. Guardian Article 1 reports Trump's ultimatum was issued on Sunday, while Guardian Article 2 states it was issued at the weekend, no specific day. Guardian Article 1 mentions Trump's ultimatum was issued after he warned to obliterate Iranian power plants, but Guardian Article 2 does not specify this exact phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Pauline Hanson's One Nation surge benefiting Labour in Australian elections via electoral system dynamics. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Pauline Hanson stated it's just the start regarding One Nation's political momentum after the election. One Nation secured 20% of the vote in the election. Liberal Party vote collapsed to 19% during counting. Labour's vote remained stable at 39% despite right-wing fragmentation. Greens' vote increased to 11% in the election. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two articles. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.